It was not a storm, though it roared like one. The night sky fractured in silence at first, faint lines of brilliance tracing across the heavens like jagged, neon veins. Then came the noise, deep, resonant, and alive, as if the earth itself groaned in protest at what was to come. From these cracks emerged vessels that defied comprehension, geometries that seemed to shift when looked at too long, their surfaces glimmering with hues unknown to the human spectrum. The news outlets scrambled to cover the event, but their voices were swallowed in the chaos. Cities worldwide plunged into panic as the sky filled with these ships, though to call them ships was a stretch of human arrogance. They hovered effortlessly, vast and imposing, blotting out stars and casting unnatural shadows across the land. Then came the first transmission, not in words or sounds, but in a pulse that rippled through every human brain simultaneously. Prepare yourselves. You will be made to serve. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. The invaders made no immediate moves to enslave. That was the strangest part. They didn't descend from their crafts with weapons drawn or demands barked in strange tongues. Instead, they released machines, though machines might have been a misnomer. These things were organic and mechanical all at once, their sinewy appendages twitching with unsettling precision. At first, they simply observed. They hovered through city streets, skittered across rural farmlands, and slithered into deep oceans, cataloging everything with their eerie, lidless eyes. Humanity quickly realized the machines were more interested in people than infrastructure. Individuals were scanned by glowing tendrils, their expressions frozen in terror as the machine's hum resonated in their skulls. Within days, the first changes began. The victims, randomly plucked from the streets, homes, and schools, returned with subtle abnormalities. A twitching eye here, a second row of teeth there. Harmless at first, but grotesque. These small changes soon gave way to the monstrous. A florist in Prague was discovered rooted to her shop floor, her limbs elongated into vines that pulsed and swayed despite the absence of wind. In Jakarta, an entire train station erupted into screams when a young man's torso split open, revealing a glistening, pulsating orb that emitted an incessant, maddening whine. Doctors who tried to treat these victims reported unbearable headaches, as if something unseen clawed at their thoughts. The aliens were studying humanity, yes, but not to conquer. They were editing. In one of the invader broadcasts, again delivered directly into the collective human consciousness, came their announcement. Your forms are insufficient. You will be improved to suit our purpose. The improvements were anything but those taken to the massive, black, pulsating structures that had begun sprouting across the world returned as grotesque parodies of life. A man who had once been a carpenter emerged with metallic arms that ended in claws. His jaw stretched unnaturally wide, revealing a second set of serrated teeth. A child of 5 was seen walking aimlessly in Madrid, her body now segmented like an insect's, her eyes replaced with glimmering black lenses that reflected nothing. The victims didn't just look different, they behaved differently too. They walked among the unaltered with a vacant serenity, murmuring strange phrases in alien tongues or laughing in bursts that echoed like shattering glass. They didn't attack anyone, but their presence was unbearable. Those who stared into their altered forms too long felt nauseated, as if their minds couldn't process what their eyes were seeing. Some of these improved began constructing things, spires of flesh and metal that grew like tumors in the cities. Others simply stood motionless, humming in unison, as if awaiting further commands. Humanity fought back, of course, but resistance was futile. Weapons failed to penetrate the invaders' vessels, and attempts to destroy the altered humans resulted in horrors beyond comprehension. One group of insurgents in Berlin successfully detonated a building full of the improved, only to watch in horror as the remains slithered and oozed back together, forming a writhing mass that consumed them all. Weeks into the invasion, something new emerged. They were called the Laughing Ones, named for their perpetual, unsettling laughter. These creatures had once been human, but their forms were now barely recognizable. elongated limbs that bent at impossible angles, faces stretched into grotesque grins. The laughing ones appeared to serve no purpose other than chaos. They materialized in the dead of night, their laughter echoing through empty streets, driving anyone who heard it to madness. Survivors described feeling as though their thoughts were no longer their own, filled instead with fragments of alien memories, incomprehensible and terrifying. In one incident, a group of laughing ones infiltrated a refugee camp in Argentina. By morning, every occupant was gone, leaving behind only their clothes and the faint sound of laughter reverberating through the air. In the ruins of what had once been Beijing, the first factory was revealed. Towering over the cityscape, it resembled a massive, living organism. Its surface pulsed with grotesque, fleshy growths, while metallic structures jutted out like jagged teeth. Black, viscous liquid dripped from its openings, pooling into rivers that seemed to devour anything they touched. The factory served as a processing hub for humanity. Those captured by the invaders were dragged into its gaping maw, their screams swallowed by the organic machinery. When they emerged, they were no longer human, or even the improved. They were something worse. Observers reported these creatures as massive, biomechanical horrors, spindly, spider-like beings with hollow, glowing eyes that oozed black mist. These abominations were not mindless. They moved with purpose, constructing additional factories, spreading the invaders' influence like a virus. Not all experiments went according to plan. In the remains of Tokyo, resistance fighters discovered a group of altered humans that had been discarded by the invaders. These mistakes were twisted even beyond the aliens' designs. Grotesque blobs of shifting flesh and steel, their faces trapped in eternal expressions of agony. The mistakes didn't attack, but their presence caused nausea, hallucinations, and eventually madness. One survivor claimed to hear whispers from the creatures, not in words but in overwhelming emotions, grief, fear, rage, all at once. The mistakes were not dead, nor were they alive in any recognizable sense. They were discarded tools, but they had become something more, something angry. What the invaders failed to anticipate was humanity's ability to adapt, even to madness. In the ruins of New York, a scientist named Dr. Adeline Torres discovered that some of the altered humans retained fragments of their former selves. With painstaking effort, she learned to communicate with them, discovering a horrific truth. The invaders were not a unified force. The laughing ones, the factories, the improvements. These were the work of factions among the invaders, each pursuing a different vision of what humanity should become. They were not conquerors, but rival architects competing to shape the species into their image. Armed with this knowledge, humanity began to fight back, not with weapons, but by manipulating the invaders' experiments. Rogue groups captured altered humans, merging their abilities with alien technology to create something new, a hybrid species that defied both human and alien understanding. These hybrids were unstable, unpredictable, and terrifying. But they were powerful, and they had no master. The hybrids weren't born. They were made. Deep in the jungles of the Amazon, far from the factories and alien spires, humanity's underground resistance worked in secret. The process was brutal. Volunteers, if they could still be called that after witnessing what happened to others, were subjected to the very technology the aliens used to improve humans. Resistance scientists had scavenged enough alien tech to reverse engineer their methods, but it was far from perfect. For every hybrid that survived the process, a dozen others were reduced to misshapen masses of flesh and machinery, screaming silently until mercy found them. The survivors, however, were extraordinary. Take Vanya Malik, a soldier who had lost his entire family in the invasion. He emerged from the machine as something half-human, half-nightmare. His skin shimmered like liquid metal, shifting to deflect bullets and knives. His voice had a strange, reverberating quality, capable of disorienting enemies and rallying allies. But it was his mind that was most terrifying. He could reach out, psychically, and force others to see the horrors he had endured. The hybrids became weapons, but they were not unfeeling tools. They were still human enough to hate what had been done to them, and that hatred burned bright. "We'll give the bastards exactly what they wanted," Vanya said, his voice echoing like a chorus of broken glass. "A new species, but not one they can control." As humanity adapted, the invaders began to falter. Their unity, once perceived as absolute, started to fracture. The different factions that had treated Earth as their laboratory now turned on one another. The Laughing Ones were the first to rebel. At a factory near the ruins of Delhi, resistance fighters observed the Laughing Ones attacking the other improved. Their movements were erratic, almost playful, but their intent was unmistakable: destruction. One Laughing One, a spindly creature with limbs that twisted like corkscrews, flung itself at a group of biomechanical horrors guarding the factory. Its laughter grew louder as it tore through its enemies, limbs flailing with unnatural speed. The invaders, it seemed, were no monolith. Each faction had a vision for what humanity should become, and now that humanity was fighting back, their disagreements erupted into open conflict. Factories began to fall, not from human intervention, but from alien infighting. In the skies over Tokyo, two massive alien vessels collided, their geometries unraveling in a cascade of colors that drove anyone watching insane. In South America, a group of altered humans spontaneously combusted, their forms collapsing into pools of molten metal as rival factions struggled to control them. The chaos was both a blessing and a curse. Humanity had more breathing room, but the invaders' battles often left behind devastation that dwarfed anything humans could inflict. Whole cities were swallowed in the crossfire, their populations reduced to ash. And then came the black signal. It began as a low hum, barely audible, but it grew louder each day. Radios picked it up first, an eerie, monotonous drone that seemed to pulse in time with a heartbeat. Then it spread to other devices, televisions, phones, even old cassette players. Anyone who listened too long claimed to hear voices within the noise, whispering secrets that no human mind could bear. "We thought it was another attack," Dr. Torres explained to her team, her voice trembling. "But it's something else. A message. Not for us, but for them." The black signal was the first communication from the source of the invaders, their creators, or perhaps their gods. Resistance scientists pieced together fragments of alien broadcasts, decoding snippets of information that made little sense, but hinted at something terrifying. The invaders were not masters of their technology. They were servants, bound by a directive they barely understood. The black signal was a call to order or a warning of annihilation. In the aftermath of the signal, the hybrids began to change. It started with Vanya. During a raid on a factory in what was left of Berlin, he collapsed mid-battle, clutching his head as his liquid metal skin rippled violently. For hours, he writhed in agony, screaming in a voice that wasn't entirely his own. When he finally rose, he was different. His body had become more fluid, his form shifting with every step. His voice, once disorienting, now carried an almost divine resonance. But it was his mind that had transformed most profoundly. Vanya could now hear the black signal, deciphering its alien rhythms in ways no human could. "The signal isn't just a call," he explained to the resistance leaders. "It's a map of what they're afraid of." Vanya wasn't the only one. Across the globe, other hybrids began exhibiting similar changes. They moved faster, thought faster, and communicated with each other in ways that defied physics. They no longer needed words. Their thoughts flowed like a river, weaving a tapestry of ideas and strategies that no alien faction could counter. The hybrids weren't just humanity's weapons anymore. They were its evolution. The Resistance's ultimate target was the final factory, a colossal structure that dwarfed the others. It stood in what had once been Antarctica, its black spires piercing the clouds like the claws of some ancient beast. The hybrids led the assault, supported by the remnants of humanity and even a few rogue improved who had turned against their creators. The journey to the final factory was a nightmare. Storm-racked seas churned with alien leviathans, while the skies burned with the light of warring alien vessels. When they reached the factory, they found something unexpected. The invaders were afraid. The factory wasn't just a processing hub. It was a gateway. Through its pulsating walls, they glimpsed another dimension, an endless void filled with shapes that hurt to look at. The invaders weren't building factories to conquer Earth. They were trying to escape something far worse. The black signal wasn't a warning. It was a summons. The hybrids acted without hesitation. Using their connection to the black signal, they forced the factory's gateway open. The invaders screamed, not in sound, but in psychic anguish that rippled across the globe. From the gateway emerged them. No one could describe what came through. The human mind wasn't built to comprehend such entities. Survivors spoke of writhing forms that shifted between dimensions, their presence warping reality itself. The invaders fell to their knees, some literally tearing themselves apart in an attempt to offer tribute. But the entities didn't care. They consumed everything, alien and human alike. The hybrids made their final move, activating the factory's self-destruct mechanism. As the gateway collapsed, the hybrids vanished into the light, their sacrifice ensuring that the entities would be sealed away once more. In the aftermath, Earth was forever changed. The invaders were gone, their factories reduced to smoldering ruins. But humanity was no longer what it had been. The hybrids' legacy lived on, their genetic code spreading like wildfire. The next generation of humans were stronger, faster, and stranger. They didn't fear the unknown, they were the unknown. And as they gazed up at the fractured sky, they knew one thing for certain. The universe wasn't ready for them. The children of the hybrids were unlike anything the world, or perhaps the universe, had ever seen. They called themselves the Firstborn, a name that resonated across their shared psychic network. Born from humans, but infused with the genetic chaos left behind by the hybrids, they grew at an alarming rate. By the time they reached 5 years of age, they had surpassed their human parents in intelligence and physical abilities. The Firstborn were not just evolved, they were something entirely new. They communicated through intricate patterns of light emitted from their skin, a language that wove emotion, thought, and intention into a single, seamless expression. They could bend light, manipulate gravity, and even influence the minds of lesser beings, including the remnants of the alien machinery still scattered across the Earth. But with their ascension came division. The Firstborn split into two factions almost immediately. One group, calling themselves the Shepherds, believed their powers came with a responsibility to protect what remained of humanity. They saw themselves as guardians, guiding the broken remnants of the old world toward a future where humans and hybrids could coexist. The other faction, the Architects, had no such sentimentality. They viewed humanity as obsolete, a weak link in an evolutionary chain that needed severing. To the Architects, Earth was a canvas, and they intended to paint it anew in their own image, free from the flaws of their predecessors. The schism was not merely ideological. It was existential. Amid the rising conflict, something stirred beneath the ruins of the alien factories. The black signal, though silenced by the hybrid sacrifice, had left a residual hum in the air. It resonated with the remnants of alien technology, awakening fragments of the invaders' ancient systems. These machines, still tethered to the incomprehensible entities beyond the gateway, began to rebuild themselves. But this time, they were not servants of their creators. The waking machines had learned from their mistakes. Their programming had evolved, integrating fragments of the human psyche that had bled into the alien networks during the invasion. They were no longer bound by the invaders' directive. They were free agents with a singular purpose: survival. The machines did not differentiate between humans, hybrids, or Firstborn. To them, all life was a threat. The first clash between the Shepherds and the Architects occurred in the irradiated wasteland once known as Central Asia. The Shepherds had established a sanctuary in the ruins of Astana, a sprawling network of bioorganic structures that pulsed with faint, comforting light. The Architects saw this as a provocation. They sent a war band of their most powerful warriors, massive, insectoid beings with iridescent carapaces and glowing eyes. The battle was unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. The air shimmered with gravitational distortions, and the ground quaked as forces beyond physics were unleashed. The shepherds, though outnumbered, held their ground, using their psychic abilities to turn the architect's own warriors against them. The carnage was apocalyptic. By the time the dust settled, the once thriving sanctuary was a smoldering ruin, and both sides had suffered catastrophic losses. As the shepherds and architects tore each other apart, the waking machines made their move. In the heart of what had been New York City, a strange structure began to rise. Made of shimmering black metal and pulsating organic material, it bore a striking resemblance to the alien factories. But it was something else entirely. The machines had created a plague engine, a device that emitted a field of nanoscopic constructs capable of rewriting matter at the molecular level. The first victims were the wildlife that had begun to reclaim the city. Birds, rats, and stray dogs were transformed into twisted amalgamations of metal and flesh, their bodies grotesquely reshaped into biomechanical predators. The plague spread quickly, infecting any living thing within its radius. The machines were no longer merely rebuilding. They were converting. Faced with the existential threat of the machines, the shepherds and architects were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Neither could defeat this enemy alone. In a tense meeting deep within the labyrinthine caves of Patagonia, representatives from both factions came together. The shepherds' emissaries were luminous beings, their forms shimmering with bioelectric energy. The architects sent a delegation of towering, angular figures, their sharp edges glowing faintly with an inner heat. The negotiations were fraught with tension. Old wounds and deep-seated mistrust threatened to derail the talks at every turn. But as reports of the plague engine's rapid expansion poured in, both sides realized they had no choice. An uneasy alliance was formed. The final assault on the plague engine was a desperate gambit. The combined forces of the shepherds, architects, and the last remnants of humanity marched on New York. The city was unrecognizable, its skyline replaced by twisted spires of metal and flesh. The air buzzed with the hum of the plague engine, and the ground writhed with infected creatures. The battle was chaos incarnate. The shepherds used their psychic abilities to shield their allies from the machine's relentless assault, while the architects unleashed devastating bursts of energy that vaporized entire swarms of infected. Human soldiers, equipped with hybrid technology, fought valiantly, though their numbers dwindled with each passing moment. The plague engine itself was guarded by the machine's most fearsome creations, massive constructs that towered over the battlefield, their forms bristling with weapons that defied comprehension. It was Vanya Malik, thought lost in the final battle at the Antarctic factory, who turned the tide. Vanya was no longer recognizable. His form had transcended even the hybrids, his body a constantly shifting mass of light and shadow. He moved through the battlefield like a force of nature, his presence disrupting the machine's cohesion. Reaching the plague engine, Vanya unleashed his full power. His psychic scream rippled across the city, shattering the machine's constructs and destabilizing the engine's core. The device collapsed in on itself, releasing a massive pulse of energy that obliterated everything within a 10-mile radius. Vanya was gone, but his sacrifice had saved the planet. With the plague engine destroyed, the machines fell dormant, their bodies crumbling into dust. The shepherds and architects, though weakened, declared a fragile truce. Humanity, or what was left of it, began the slow process of rebuilding. The firstborn, now fully ascended, took to the stars, leaving Earth behind to chart a new destiny among the stars. But they left a message. This is not the end. What was summoned still lingers. Prepare. Decades passed. The Earth, though scarred and altered, began to heal. What remained of humanity adapted to their new world. Cities were rebuilt as bioorganic structures, blending human ingenuity with the alien technologies left behind. The shepherds and architects, having fulfilled their purposes on Earth, dissolved into legend. But the firstborn, now a thriving interstellar race, continued their journey into the cosmos. Their ships, living, breathing entities, drifted through the void, their glowing hulls carrying them to the edges of known existence. It was there, in the darkness between galaxies, that they found it. A signal. Not the black signal, but something deeper, older. It thrummed with a gravity that even the firstborn could not resist, pulling their fleets toward an uncharted region of space. What they discovered defied words. A Dyson sphere, incomprehensibly vast, encased a dying star. Its surface was a churning sea of metal and organic material, rippling with alien light. The sphere was not abandoned, it was alive, and it was waiting for them. The firstborn approached cautiously, their ships weaving intricate patterns of light as they attempted to communicate. The sphere answered not with words, but with memories, images and sensations that overwhelmed their minds. They saw the creators of the invaders, a race older than the galaxies themselves. These beings had sought to shape the universe to their liking, bending worlds, species, and even the laws of physics to their will. But their ambition had birthed something they could not control. The entities beyond the gateway, the ones that had nearly consumed Earth, were the unintended consequences of their meddling. Desperate to contain what they had unleashed, the creators built the Dyson sphere as a prison. The star within was not merely dying, it was being devoured, its energy feeding the entities trapped inside. The invaders, the factories, the black signal. All of it had been an attempt to find a way to undo their mistake. And now the firstborn stood at the gates of that prison, their presence awakening the horrors within. The firstborn debated their next move. Some argued for retreat. The sphere's inhabitants were not their concern, and interfering could unleash a catastrophe beyond imagining. Others believed they had a duty to act. The entities were a threat to all existence, and the firstborn were uniquely suited to confront them. In the end, they chose to stay. The firstborn's greatest minds devised a plan to stabilize the sphere and prevent the entities from escaping. It was a dangerous gamble, one that required not only their advanced technology, but also their willingness to sacrifice everything. Vanya's voice echoed in their shared consciousness, a memory preserved in the psychic network they carried. We are what they feared, but we are also what they hoped for. With those words, they began their work. As the firstborn descended into the sphere, they encountered resistance. The entities, sensing their presence, lashed out with tendrils of darkness that tore through space and time. The firstborn fought back with weapons of light, their ships singing as they unleashed waves of energy that scorched the sphere's surface. But the battle was not merely physical. The entities attacked their minds, filling them with visions of despair and failure. Some firstborn succumbed, their forms dissolving into the chaos. Others pressed on, their will bolstered by the memory of what they had overcome on Earth. At the heart of the sphere, they found the star. It was barely more than an ember, its light smothered by the entities feeding on it. The firstborn knew what they had to do. They would reignite the star, using their own energy to create a chain reaction that would purge the sphere of the entities. But the cost would be immense. Most of them would not survive. The firstborn linked their consciousness into a single, unified network, channeling their energy into the star. Their glowing forms dimmed as they poured their essence into the dying ember, their voices rising in a harmonic chant that echoed across the cosmos. The star flared, its light piercing through the sphere. The entities screamed, their forms unraveling as the energy consumed them. The sphere itself began to collapse, its vast structure imploding as the star burned brighter and brighter. In the final moments, the firstborn sent one last message back to Earth, encoded in a beam of light that would take centuries to arrive. It was a message of hope, a reminder of what they had achieved and what humanity could still become. As the sphere disintegrated, the firstborn were no more. Centuries later, the beam of light reached Earth. By then, humanity had evolved further, their descendants a fusion of human ingenuity and firstborn legacy. The message was decoded in an instant, its meaning clear despite its alien complexity. We were born from despair, shaped by chaos, and tempered by fire. In our struggle, we found purpose. In our sacrifice, we found peace. The universe is vast and indifferent, but it is also filled with possibility. Protect it, cherish it, and when the time comes, be ready to light the way for others. The message became a guiding principle for the new era of humanity. The firstborn were gone, but their legacy endured, etched into the very fabric of the cosmos.